In 1966, the eastern region of Nigeria was in crisis. The Igbo people, who were traumatized by the massacres in the north, were calling for independence. Colonel Odumegwu Ojukwu, the military governor of the eastern region, faced an incredibly difficult decision. His people were demanding succession, but he understood that this could lead to war. Ojukwu was caught between the need to protect his people and the fear of plunging the nation into war. So in 1967, Nigerian leaders met in Aburi, Ghana, to find a solution to the growing tension. The meeting, known as Aburi Accord, was a critical attempt to prevent disintegration of Nigeria. Ojukwu sought greater autonomy for the eastern region, while Colonel Yakubu Gowon, representing the federal government, aimed to maintain national unity. After intense negotiations, they reached an agreement that offered a glimmer of hope. But could this fragile accord hold the country together? Unfortunately, the agreement quickly unraveled. Upon returning to Nigeria, the federal government, led by Colonel Yakubu Gowon, began to backtrack on the promises made in Aburi. Ojukwu felt deeply betrayed, and the eastern region, already isolated and overwhelmed with refugees, saw its hope for a peaceful resolution fade away. The breakdown of Aburi Accord left the East with little faith in a united Nigeria. Seeing that the eastern region has lost hope in a united Nigeria, the federal government imposed economic sanctions on the eastern region, cutting off essential supplies. Oil, the lifeblood of Nigeria's economy, became a central issue. The eastern region, particularly the Niger Delta, was rich in oil, and the federal government's action was seen as an attempt to weaken the East economically. However, these measures only fueled the resolve of Ojukwu and the Easterners, pushing them closer to the brink of secession. On May 30, 1967, Ojukwu declared the Eastern region as the Independent Republic of Biafra. This was a momentous decision for the people of the East. It was a declaration of freedom from a nation that had failed to protect them. The Biafran flag, with its rising sun, symbolized a new dawn, but the federal government saw this as a direct challenge and a declaration of war. The response from the federal government was swift. Colonel Yakubu Gowon, who was the federal government then, was determined to prevent disintegration of the country. He mobilized the federal forces, preparing for a military confrontation. Gowon made it clear that Nigeria will remain united regardless of the cost. The country was now in collision course with itself. Can you imagine? By July 1967, the Nigerian Civil War, also known as Biafra War, had officially begun. The federal forces had advantage in numbers and resources, but the Biafrans were fiercely determined to defend their new nation. The war quickly became brutal, with significant casualties on both sides. Nigeria was now at war with itself, and the woman toll was staggering. So, as the conflict escalated, the international community began to take notice. The response was mixed. Some countries, like France, appeared to support Biafra, possibly seeing an opportunity to extend their influence in Africa. Others, such as the United Kingdom, with its close ties to Nigeria, supported the federal government's effort to preserve national unity. The Nigerian Civil War was becoming a global issue, but as the world watched and debated, the situation on the ground continued to deteriorate. The war brought immense suffering to civilians, particularly in Biafra. The federal government's blockade of the region led to several humanitarian crises. Images of starving children and overcrowded refugee camps shocked the world. Aid organizations struggled to address the growing needs, but the scale of the crisis was overwhelming. The people of Biafra were under siege, and thousands were dying from hunger and disease. The war had taken on a devastating new dimension. In August 1967, Biafran forces decided to take the fight to the federal government by invading the mid-western region. It was a bold move led by Colonel Banjo. The plan was to capture key cities and secure more resources for Biafra. Initially, the Biafran troops made significant gain, capturing Benin City and even advancing toward Lagos. But the federal government forces were not going to let that stand. So they regrouped and launched a counter-attack, and soon the Biafran advance was pushed back. The war was far from over, and it was becoming clearer that this conflict could be long and bloody. By the end of 1967, it was clear that the conflict was intensifying. Both sides were preparing for a long and grueling war. The initial hopes for a quick resolution were gone, replaced by the grim reality of a prolonged and brutal conflict. New challenges and alliances were on the horizon, and the future of Biafra was uncertain. What strategy would Ojukwu and his commanders employ to defend their nation? Would international intervention alter the course of the war? All these questions will be answered in the next episode, episode 3. This is episode 2. If you've not watched episode 1, you can get it on our page or on our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.